And now, the most underrated voice in all media, the alternative's alternative, Chuck Ochelli.
The 13th day of March, 2 days away from the Ides, which I do keep warning you about. This is the Ochelli Effect, broadcast live on American Freedom Radio at AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Happy Moon Day to you. Anyway, you know, it's a fascinating time to be alive. We could be talking about what's happening in the political sphere, but I really don't want to go there so much. You know, it gets to be laughable, man. I feel sick, and I feel like the society and the planet is sick as well, but we may touch upon that tonight. Barry Prince, who is the host of The Big Puzzle, is with me, and I do appreciate you guys tuning in. Of course, no matter how you encountered the show, via your fondle slab of choice, your applicable application, further on down the stream, or if you're on one of those unauthorized live streaming places, or maybe even hearing us through a micro broadcaster in the Northeast where you're about to get pounded with a blizzard, I hope you're doing well. So Barry Prince, the host of The Big Puzzle, is with me, as I said, and we have a couple of interesting things to discuss tonight, don't we, Barry?
I think we're going to have an interesting show, Chuck. We're going to go everywhere tonight, because who knows where we end up.
Well, there you go, and I've got a couple of ideas. Patty Walking Turtle will join us at some point, but and who knows what the conversation will turn into just with her presence. Interesting lady, you know, and you're more familiar with her than I am, Barry, but I find her really fascinating when she's on the show, and you know, so I'm looking forward to her being on. What do you have in mind with her tonight? Anything that we should be looking forward to?
Well, you know what, with Chuck, with Patty, it's just her heart and how she really articulates and puts together what she sees going on in the world and solutions, and she really has a good heart, and I just love having her on. I've known Patty for about 4 years now, and I feel like I've got a really good friend out there. So I look forward to chatting with her, and we've also been joined by Harry Rhodes tonight. Now, Harry's an inventor, and I'll be quite honest, folks, I just got introduced to Harry today, and I spent some time talking with him and looking at some of the things he's doing, and I found it absolutely fascinating. So I invited him in here for half an hour tonight, Chuck, to tell us what he's up to. Welcome to the show, Harry. And did you want to say anything, Chuck, before I let him go?
Well, no, I'm interested to hear what Harry has to say, because you mentioned a couple of things before the show, and I think I'm gonna learn something here.
I think we all are.
Through Mr. Rhodes. So, you know, good evening to you, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Well, yeah, that's right. My background has been in inventions. I've written patents, and I've got involved with technical things. I wouldn't put myself in the class of Tesla, but I have made some unusual discoveries, and I get involved with things like the subject of ether, orgon. Tesla did touch on it. Here's some background for you. Tesla, who most people do know, discovered everything because he understood how ether works. Now that sounds a simple statement, but look at the things that Tesla discovered and actually practiced. Absolutely amazing. Tesla could even send an energy force around the planet and spank it on its way past. Now, people think this is ridiculous, it's stupid. He actually did things like that because he knew how ether works. It's an absolute incredible, fascinating subject. People have been using the power of orgon, for example, on third stage seed of genetically modified plants. It reverts back to organic. Fact. So that's just an inkling of the power of working in ether and orgon. Amazing subject.
You know, I've talked to people about orgonite on this show and the use of it to try and deal with electromagnetic fields and things like this, and started to take a look at some of the oddities that can be observed in the spectrum if one is not using standard vision, because I have a high light sensitivity. And I've discovered certain things that they always told me were distortions in my visual field, but are extremely consistent. And I actually see some of these things that they talk about, which are generally invisible to most people's eyesight. When we talk about the presentation of certain fields and things which are kind of like side effects, let's say, to things like cell towers and this kind of stuff. I can actually see some of this stuff and its effect on particulates. And it's always fascinated me that magnetism has been one of the most ignored aspects in this field, I would say. And a lot of these guys that are not seen as mainstream scientists really had all this stuff solved a long time ago, Mr. Rhodes, wouldn't you say?
Yes, there's obviously knowledge out there that was never intended for us to fully understand correctly. But when you look at, they don't even, or they teach us that they don't even know what magnetism is or how it works. But when we come back to the subject of etheric reactions, which is chi, and a number of other names they call it, you can, for example, alter the weather, because that is what controls the weather. Tesla said that ether controls electricity, magnetism, and all energy. And he was proven to be absolutely spot on. For example, when you have a tornado, negative ions or negative energy comes up from the earth, and positive ions or positive energy comes down, and the two make a vortex, which is where you get your tornado from. So if you can control ether and work with ether, you can even stop storms, create storms, lower temperatures, raise temperatures, and create rain.
Yeah, and this has always fascinated me, especially when we take a look at the seeming anomaly of, artificial clouds and things like this in the sky. We see people trying to utilize certain aspects of this work for different purposes, and I don't want to get into that subject too deeply, but I just want to kind of run around the subject briefly just to kind of warm you up here. And see where we're at. Now, apparently, some of the stuff you were talking to Barry about, really stuck with him, and I'm curious to know what that information is.
Well, it stems back to Wilhelm Reich, who one day was walking past a lake, and he worked with orgon, and in fact, he was a psychologist. And as he was passing this lake, there was a steel scaffold tube by the edge of the water, and when he put his foot on it, the water rushed in, and when the water rushed back out again, he noticed a wave a few feet above the lake go straight across the lake. A bit like when you see a mirage, but slightly different. He noticed that there was definitely an energy there, and he replicated that. And to cut a long story short, he invented the cloud buster. And that there's a special way of making a cloud buster, and we now know how that is made. And it involves an etheric capacitor and tubes. But the amazing thing about these cloud busters is you can reset the weather back to a natural state from 4,000 and 5,000 miles away.
Even despite the fact that people are interfering with it, utilizing, like I said, these particulates that seem to be emerging in the artificial clouds, stuff like that, what you're saying is that this kind of, if you know how to create one of these devices, you could literally reverse the effects that other people are trying to create, right? And put it back to a natural state, couldn't you?
Absolutely. In fact, without being into too much detail, we've actually dropped as much as 6,000 square miles of chemtrails. That takes some believing. But give you a few examples. Christmas Day in the United Kingdom, they said the Met Office and the weather forecast was the worst storm in living memory would hit the United Kingdom on Christmas Day and Boxing Day.
I remember that.
Yep. And what did we have? We had the most beautiful Christmas day with blue skies, no wind, and fantastic sunshine. And how can the Met Office explain that? They had no answers. And basically what we'd done, we'd deployed 3 days earlier, and it completely reset the whole of the atmosphere so the storm didn't even hit. And some of it was deflected north. Scotland did get some heavy winds and rain, but absolutely nothing like the weather forecast that they forecast. Fact.
I found that video that I did go look of yours, Harry, of that typhoon that was coming into the east of Taiwan there. And
biggest typhoon in history,
it was like a massive. No, I've been going to other spots to try and vet that information. I'm going to go have a look at some other radar charts. I went to Climate Viewer 3D to see if he had it on his archives. But what I've seen on that screen is the absolute dispersal of a massive typhoon just after it hits shore. It completely disappears. If this technology can be used to deflect a storm in that way, then the possibilities are endless for saving lives.
I spoke to the person who built HARP in Alaska, and I told him what I'd got. And this guy knows his stuff. He's built 7 HARP stations, which incidentally he said is for the purpose of weather modification, amongst other things. Now, HARP and atmospheric heaters, that's what they do. They heat the atmosphere up. Now, what ether does, it creates a drop in temperature, and it normally creates a slight vortex. So he admitted that HARP can be stopped with this equipment. Now, that is one hell of a statement to make.
Well, it's interesting to me also because a guest that both Barry and I know, but I'm not going to out him by name at this moment, has told me before that they know of a device which can do this on a very small scale in a very small area, that they use themselves in order to keep the weather calm when they go fishing. They have no idea. You know who I'm talking about, don't you, Barry?
Yes, of course I do, yeah. And we won't mention a name, but yeah, that just jogged my memory, Chuck.
Yeah, and what's fascinating to me is that he has no idea how it works. And this is not a guy who would not be adverse to learning technical ideas like this. He has no idea how this device works, but yet he actually uses it in order to kind of clear away clouds and things when he's going fishing. So I've heard about this a few different times.
Your viewers will think you're absolutely nuts, but I've made these small devices. I'm not sure if they're the same. They're based on Willem Reich's design of metallic and organic layers. There's also some of the top secret things that go on inside them, which we do know. And I put these in the hands of a few people, and almost scoffing at me when I claimed what they could do. 3 days later, they come back to me almost with a white face because they say, these are absolutely incredible. You don't realize what you've got. And I said, yes, I do, but you didn't believe me at first. But this is the results that we're getting from people. You drive around with one in the car, and you have big blue holes in front of you that can stretch on for 30, 40 miles.
I find it really fascinating also because when you talk about Wilhelm Reich, this is a guy who is, discredited in a mainstream sense by a lot of people. But when I take a look at his work, here's the thing, and I discovered this by talking to somebody who was very much involved with studying orgone, right? When I look at his work, in fact, it kind of verified some of the things that I see. See, I'm highly light sensitive, right? And he talks about different types of energy which do different things, sort of, being presented in a colored spectrum, which sounds like absolute madness to the average person, right? That if you watch the reactions through a certain scope, you can actually see that this is blue and this is green and this is red, and these different types of energy interplay in these vortexes, right? Do you know what I'm talking about here?
I've not studied that deeply, but I have read about it, yes. It's a fact. they teach us that atoms and molecules are what make everything up. And we've been lied to. Everything's made from a vortex of energy, which is in relation to ether. And that's why CERN's Hadron Collider goes smaller and smaller and smaller. There are no solid parts. It's a fallacy.
Well, what it appears to me is this. Everything does consist of energy. The wavelength or the frequency of that energy, its level of vibration differs, right? So a rock has a wavelength of energy just like the air does and everything else. And it's at a different sort of frequency, which gives it a different presentation, in the material sense. Okay. When you begin to understand that, it's not a matter of wind is such a different substance than the physical hard objects that it's pushing around, or it's not a matter of water needs to be carried up into the sky and therefore drop back down in the form of rain. It is literally energy transfers which occur. Some things are better conduits than others, right? Yes. And I'm not saying that I understand this subject perfectly well. I'm just trying to get my head around it because it is so diametrically opposed to what they teach you in, your standard scientific education. Whether it's grade school, high school, college, doesn't matter. They don't teach you about the energetic properties in matter. Matter and energy are seemingly separated subjects in standard scientific text. But in reality, they're not, are they?
No, when you look at water, for example, which is one of the etheric kickstarts, if you like, we use water in the back chamber to start an etheric reaction, which instantly reacts with the upper atmosphere. Now, even from infant school, nobody asked the question, and if you did, you never got the answer. For example, I worked out on 1 square of land, 1 acre, if 1 inch of rain falls, you've got 310 tons, and you multiply that up to a mile, you end up with 130,000 tons, and if you had 5 inches of rain in 1 square mile, you end up with hundreds of thousands of tons, and if you go to 10 miles square, you end up with millions of tons of water, millions of tons. And yet they tell us that this floats around in the atmosphere, but then suddenly appears and drops. They never told us the truth. Now you can have 200 miles by 200 miles, and you've got hundreds and hundreds of millions of tons of water floating around that suddenly appears at the bottom edge of a cloud.
Well, right. Like right now, the northeast of the United States is in the path of a blizzard, right? This is going to drop literally. I mean, I don't even know how to measure the weight of that snow that's going to fall in that area, right? Which is all going to be in the northeast. Billions of tons is possibility, right? Now, imagine that billions of tons of anything is able to float up in the atmosphere. That already seems like it's illogical to begin with. It seems to me as though the snowflakes or the raindrops or the hail or whatever it is that winds up hitting the ground must be manufactured in a reaction up there, not that the water is literally carried up and because it's cold it falls down as ice, or that the water falls back down after it goes up. That seems illogical to me. It seems as though it's actually being generated in the atmosphere. I mean, I may sound like a simpleton here, but go ahead.
Ether's built on a quantum reaction. Now, quantum means it doesn't respect time and place. So the water, it defies all logic, but the water is actually supplied possibly from somewhere else instantly, and it appears at the bottom edge of the cloud. Now, a cloud doesn't necessarily mean there's more moisture there. A cloud can be drier than the air outside the cloud. So cloud doesn't mean moisture. We always think it's always droplets of water. That is not necessarily true. So it's an incredible subject. But if you look at water, water can have a memory for millions of years. 2 drops of water, they did a test in the laboratory. they stored something like 150,000 Blu-ray CDs and all the information from 13 libraries on 2 drops of water, recorded it and played it back again. How the hell does that happen?
Well, that's something way beyond my comprehension. Barry, I mean, and I've actually heard, you know what's interesting about this, speaking of ether, I mean, water is one thing, but believe it or not, I have heard information being able to be transferred by fire even. That there is a way to utilize flames in order to transfer information as well, which sounds really strange, and now it sounds like I'm talking about magic. And so are you, in fact. I mean, storing memory in water, people would be like, wait a minute, if you freeze it, it might stay in the same shape. But other than that, water doesn't have a memory. But it absolutely does. And in fact, it's not only has a memory, it seems to have a mood. It has a lot of things going on there that scientifically, once again, in a standard sense, they would tell you that this as a substance cannot possibly have these properties, right?
Yeah. Here's something that will blow your mind even more. Either our viewers, our listeners have either disappeared or they're sitting there with their mouths open now. There's a gentleman called Joe Sal. His name is not Sal, but he was nicknamed. His name is Joe. He lives in Australia, on the East Coast. One of my friends personally knows him. And what he invented was free energy. This is not hydrogen from water. It's totally different. He gets a frequency going within tubes, and he knows by the feel of them which is the polarized end, which is the negative end. There's actually 3 poles on a tube, the center and 2 ends. And if you line them up correctly and fill them with water, you can get a frequency that generates energy. Now, here's the kicker. This is what nobody believed until they saw it. He disconnects the fuel line from the tank when the engine's running, and he connects a solid rod from these 3 tubes. And the engine carries on running. It's not a pipe. It's a solid metal rod that he connects and bolts to the engine. And what it creates is an implosion when the piston is coming up and an explosion when it's going down. And he alters the timing by 80 degrees. And the car runs for hours with no fuel. You can, any of your listeners can look up on YouTube and put Joe Sal. He's there giving interviews, and he even shows his cars running. He got a visit from the Men in Black because a newspaper did an article on him, and it was going to go public. Excuse me. What they didn't do, they didn't take away his technology. They basically told him to stop what he was doing and not to go public. Now, nobody knows this, only a few people. When his car was driving at a certain speed, the car started to become weightless. Now, you think about that. Now, water, that type of technology with frequency and water to actually defy gravity, this is an inkling of the sort of machinery. If they hadn't got this technology, they would have confiscated it and asked him, picked his brains. But they didn't. So that means they've already got this technology, and I've had it for a long time.
Yeah, well, I can find that easy to believe. Barry, you should get Mr. Rhodes in touch with Shaziz, man, because he's talking about doing things with water that in order to run engines and stuff like this. I wonder what would happen if Shaziz used one of these kind of configurations like he's talking about from his friend there in Australia. Probably he'd get a visit from the government too.
I think anybody that's involved in this is going to eventually get a visit from the government. But you know what? If enough people are made knowledgeable of this, it doesn't matter because they can't shut us all down, right? And that's that's what Shaziz is doing. He's sharing it with everybody, and he's putting it out for nothing because he wants it out there, the technology that he's working on. I'd love to get you introduced to Shaziz, Harry.
Yeah, we can do that sometime.
I could even drag him into the night, Chuck. If I message him, he'd join.
Well, we'll see what we can do about that.
Sure.
People are asking in messages and in the chat who the guest is. His name is Harry Rhodes. Okay, and he's an inventor, and that's really all I know about him. Barry encountered him, and so far we've had a discussion about various things related to, I would say, alternative energy at the very least.
One thing's for sure, you could never make money on free energy. That would be impossible.
Well, no,
you can't make money, but you wouldn't be allowed to.
Well, no, but you know what? The actual initial introduction of this could be something that made a good fortune for somebody, because look, if you were able to teach people how to build these things, well, there you go. That's usually the danger, isn't it? If you're able to teach people how to do this themselves, they could self-replicate it, make it an open source kind of thing. There's more than one way to go about this.
Yes.
So it is possible to make money at it, but eventually it would be the kind of thing where it's just acceptable and it's everywhere and it's accessible and that's it.
I invented an orgone energy saver which involved capacitors, which leveled out the peaks and troughs of energy, because when a motor starts up, all that's dead energy, but the meter still records it. And I used orgone devices to stop the resistance in the cables and the flow of the electricity, and it reduced the electric bill by 40%. And when trading standards found out about it, I believe the energy industry pushed them to take me off the market. That's before I even got started. So they took my website down, and they said I'd have to reveal all the technology and the information on how it works and prove it works. Now, normally trading standards don't ask those questions. I sent them videos of it working and doing the job, and they refused to accept that. So, literally, I had to just close down and forget it.
Well, we're going to see anything that comes along in the world of free energy. You're going to see major pushback from the corporations, of course, because to me, free energy in the future will be available hopefully to everybody, and the corporations won't have their stranglehold on us. But until we educate the public that this is a reality, we're still going to see a majority of the public go down the status quo rope. And I think by spreading knowledge, eventually this is going to go viral. That's what I think, because it is a reality. I'm tied in with so many people now that are working on free energy, and some of the things that they're inventing, I'm not a scientist, but there's just so many people now working on it that one only has to come to the conclusion that it is a reality and we need to expose it. And guys like you, Harry, are doing a great job.
Cheers, thanks.
Well, and this leads me to the next question, which is that, when we think about the idea that, the greater corporate interests certainly wouldn't want, their cash register closed on supplying, the elements for energy all the time. One wonders if it couldn't be developed in a different way so that, the same type of people or a new group of people could benefit just as easily through the ancillary parts of it, right? Let's just say you wanted to provide people with, okay, build it yourself, no problem, but we'll manufacture the parts, let's just say. And nothing is perpetual. We know this. Usually when they first develop something, if you ever notice, it lasts forever, and then after a while it becomes something that falls apart easily. You would think that they would come up with a business model that would allow this to still work out, and then we wouldn't have to do all the terrible damaging things that we do in order to provide energy for everything from our lights and, use of nuclear power, which Barry and I have focused on a bunch of times on this show, how ridiculous that is, all the way on to the black blood industry of oil, which is thoroughly and wholly disgusting all the way around. They've got us eating this stuff, putting it on our skin, using it for everything in the world, and yet it's just one of the most divisive and deadly things on the planet, really, outside of, once again, nuclear energy. Well,
I know one thing for sure. I'd rather, instead of an oil spill, I'd rather have a coal spill any day.
Amen.
And yet they say coal is filthy.
You know, Harry, and I know that they can take coal, burn it, reburn it through certain burning systems, and when your end product comes out, it would be absolutely almost 100% clean. They have that technology, but it's the cost of doing it that holds them back from doing it. It's just like aluminum scrubbers. Believe it or not, the biggest aluminum smelter in Canada is Rio Tinto. And they are building a new plant in British Columbia here, and the wisdom of our government is telling them that they don't need scrubbers on this aluminum facility. I mean, the insanity alone of that. But that's just one of the things we're dealing with when we talk about these issues. Insanity.
I just want to come back to, sorry, Barry.
Go ahead.
I just want to come back to chemtrails. I think the word is spreading round on that now, and there's all sorts of reasons why chemtrails are brought about. But there's a very evil agenda going on. There's probably 7 or 8 purposes for spraying in the atmosphere. And one of them that's overlooked, because I can search patents out and find them through my experience. And I came across one where it says laying magnetic particulates into the atmosphere, such as barium, strontium, and even acid, acts as a conductor. And the patent went on to say that they can store energy in the atmosphere and collect energy from solar energy. So you imagine I've got 4 kilowatts and just a few solar panels on my roof. Imagine if you can collect the energy in just 20% of the Earth's atmosphere. You've got billions and billions of kilowatts to use at your disposal. And it even goes on that it can transfer energy across the sky to another part of the planet. And these are patents that have been granted. So when they're laying chemtrails and you see all that energy frequency going on up there, you can rest assured they are collecting energy in the atmosphere to use for whatever evil plans they are doing, whether it's for hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever, even collection of energy in satellites and back down to the Earth again. I believe there's some form of energy weapons up there that the likes we haven't even seen yet.
Well, solar energy is a weird topic because to me, it seems like it's very sensible, except one problem. A lot of people believe that, and here's where my odd vision comes in again. A lot of people believe that, the sun provides light. The reaction that I see from the sun myself is that it effectively provides an energy source, which then is illuminated once it gets here. It creates illumination here.
Yes. If you're standing with the sun behind you in space, you can't see any light coming from the sun.
No, not at all.
I liken see when it hits something else.
Yeah, see, I liken it to, we pretty much live inside of a fluorescent light bulb, and the sun is the electricity coming into the bulb. In other words, that's not what's providing the light itself, okay? The elements inside of the bulb is what is actually creating the light. That's what I see. And, so therefore, solar energy is already a used energy source. It seems to me as though we're only harnessing the leftovers of what is actually available from the sun if we're putting up a panel here on the surface. Now that might sound like a crazy assertion to some people, but that's what it appears to be. And I say again, the sun doesn't provide light. It simply provides a radiation or an energy, which then is lit up here on the surface, okay? Very much like providing electricity to a bulb, okay, except we're inside the bulb. It's an odd sort of a thing, and I think that solar has not proven to be efficient enough to say provide the same type of energy that we're used to in the Western world, right? It doesn't seem to create it fast enough or to be able to be utilized fast enough to give us the same amount of electricity, which is utilized everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But actually harnessing what exists in the atmosphere itself. Now that's a different, that's a whole other kettle of fish. That's not just the residual effect from the sun. That's a lot of other things that I think are completely untapped for that purpose at this time, or at least that's what I can observe. What do you think?
Well, when energy is concerned, you can't create energy. You can only tap into it as it passes you. That's what Tesla said. And that's absolutely true. You can't create electricity. You can only use the energy as it passes through the cables. But I don't have the answers to everything. I've been looking into this for 3 years, but it's totally blown me away. Even talking about etheric reactions in orgone, Willem Reich got a very powerful sample of radiation, and he actually put it into one of his orgone chambers, and then he released some rats into that chamber, and towards that would kill us within 24 hours. And those rats continued to live a long and happy life. And when he did the radiation test, the radiation went up by many hundreds of times. So it even became more radioactive. And yet the rats survived it without any ill effects. You'd think that'd be impossible. But what did happen, within a radius of quite a few miles, I think it was about 50 or 60 miles, or maybe even longer than that, radiation started to show up. So it was translated from one area and put into another area. But with no particular ill effects. Nobody died from it. And I wonder, we've got this problem with Fukushima. Now, the equipment I've got works etherically. And I'm just curious on whether we point our equipment at areas where there's radiation, where it will actually reverse the effects of the radiation. That's a very interesting proposition. And if enough people had this equipment, I wonder to what degree a place could be neutralized so it's safe again.
Yeah, no, me too. And it is interesting to observe, like you said, that realistically, when I said about creating electricity, what I meant was, the energy is not created, but it's directed. And it seems as though you can't direct enough of it by just using a solar panel to, say, replace what it is we already have access to overnight. But the potential for actually harnessing the atmospheric conditions and the ether, which I'd like you to describe or explain to people what you mean when you use the word ether or ethereal. But the thing is that, when you talk about harnessing that, I think that's a much more, effective, stronger, let's just call it, source for energy than even the energy that does transmit from the sun.
Yeah, ether is it's present everywhere. You can't particularly call it a substance or a matter. It's more, I would term it as a condition. But its presence is right through the universe. Ether, for example, is very present when, for example, a star implodes and you get that vortex of energy and you get a double pole. You get two poles of energy coming out, one north and one south. The most powerful force in the whole of the universe, without exception, is an imploding vortex, like you have, for example, in a tornado. Very, very powerful, and that's the sort of energy that's the technique or reaction of an etheric reaction. But nobody fully understands it. You can't explain it. The etheric charge goes from the lower potential to the higher potential. All energy we know goes from high to low potential. And this is, when we deploy cloudbusters, this is what we've got to understand. For example, when they do a weather forecast and they say there's a low coming in, it might be a low pressure, but it's actually a high etheric potential. So to get a reaction with that, we generate a low etheric potential on the ground, and then we can control the storm. So we can either stop the storm, or we can compound it and make it rain. Well,
that seems to have been one of the great keys to Reif's work, or Reich, whatever, however you want to pronounce it, to his work is that when you create a condition where something is lacking, sort of like a vacuum, if you create a vacuum and then you poke a hole in it, air rushes in. It seems as though this is part of the conductivity or the character of conduct for this type of energy is exactly this way. You create sort of a low or a lack or a void, something steps in to fill it, and this is how you direct it. And this is a concept that, again, they don't teach to electricians of any kind. They don't teach to people that make electronics. They have a very sort of standardized left to right sort of horizontal way of looking at electricity with resistance and the utilization of the conductor really not being efficient at all. I mean, would you agree with that?
Electricity isn't my field, to be honest with you.
Okay. No problem. Listen, it's not my field either. I'm just doing my best to sound intelligent here. And with that in mind, we were also joined by Patty Walkenturtle. Patty, how you doing tonight?
Hi, Chuck. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me on. Hey, Barry.
Hey, Patty.
And I'm listening intently to your guest. I only see his first name, Harry. Hello, Harry.
Hi.
Are you talking about weather manipulation? I just came in on this, so I was trying to
Well,
get Barry.
I would class weather manipulation as projecting positive ions, which is what they do. Spraying chemtrails, particulates for precipitation, using chemicals and electric war machines, if you like, for weather warfare. Ether is a natural. There's no chemicals, there's no electricity, there's no positive ions. It's a naturally occurring reaction, and we're just helping it along its way. Let me give you an example. Southern California. We've been deploying down in Southern California, and if you look now, what's happened to the deserts there? It's a paradise. There's flowers blooming, there's fruits coming out, there's fish swimming, and it's for hundreds of thousands of square miles. It's almost miraculous. But I know how it's being done, and I know who's done it.
Well, how are they triggering that? Just curious.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that this is ether, but isn't this with the use of materials which attract orgone energy, literally attract life energy into?
Yes.
I mean that's kind of. I mean,
he's a top secret that very, very few people know. I'll tell you now. Willem Reich's technique of layers of metallic and organic material is what he used. So it's two opposites. One's a life force, the other's a conductor.
Right.
Do you know what the most etheric material you could possibly put your hands on for generating orgone? It is a spider's cocoon and pure silk. That is the most successful generator for an etheric charge. Incredible. And it's pure organic. So
Well,
it's layers of very, very shiny. We talked about electricity running on the surface. It doesn't run through the metal. An etheric reaction takes place on the surface, and if that surface is shiny, like polished mirror finish stainless steel and mirrors with the organic material, you've got an incredible etheric reaction charge, and that can be used as a translator.
Well, and this literally can help life itself to flourish. In other words, I've seen experiments done where they've used this on plants, right? And they grow larger, they grow stronger, they grow faster by utilizing exactly this kind of thing. And I'm not saying that I understand Reich's work even remotely. I'm saying that I understand that this does seem to have an effect, and that at the end of the day, there's really a sort of part of the spectrum of energy that seems to represent life in general, that living things carry a particular type of energy that, let's just say less animate or inanimate objects do not. And Go ahead.
Well, Willem Reich, he had patients come to him that the medical profession told they could not be cured of cancer. And so he took them on as patients, and he cured every one of them without exception. And he had what they call the orgon cabinet, and he created two potentials of an etheric charge. The person would sit inside the cabinet. He had a smaller cabinet outside and a tube that would extract what we call DOR, which is a negative energy. And once the body's DOR has been reset, the cancer cannot survive. And there are other things that can cause this. For example, they use cannabis oil or anything that resets your DNA to its proper frequency. And that's why radiation creates cancer, because it gives the DNA the wrong frequency. Its instructions go wrong, and so it grows distorted. Now, that's one of the reasons they killed Willem Reich, because the pharmaceutical industry couldn't live with a cure for cancer that worked. And so they had him arrested under false pretenses, and he got a 2-year prison sentence, and they killed him 2 weeks before he was due to come out.
Well, and this is the thing. Not only can the incorrect frequency cause the presentation in organic matter to go bad, but you can actually sort of direct the correct frequency at it, again, to cause it to thrive, which is exactly what he was doing, is correcting the fact that these people, this organic material, which is a person, had been exposed to a frequency which misdirected its growth and development, right?
Yeah. Big worries on 5G coming out. They say it changes your DNA. So this is...
isn't everything changing our DNA nowadays?
Well, it does, yes. Yeah. But even more so, the frequencies they're using for 5G is actually manipulating your DNA deliberately to something different. Now, that's different between actually giving you cancer and it being chaotic to something that can program and reprogram your DNA. That is very worrying.
Very.
Well, but then again, a lot of cancers that have seemingly occurred organically might have actually happened because you've been exposed to a frequency one way or another. Let's just take the coal miners, for instance. They often say, okay, it's because they've been breathing in, the dust and the ashes and things like this. It may also be that they've been in these caves where there is a different frequency that's produced, right, by friction up against the different bits, the different minerals, okay? And frequencies are caused by that. Frequencies are caused by exposure to different minerals as well. And these things might have coalesced together in order to cause, part of the prolific black lung problem as well. I'm not saying that the dust didn't, that the contaminants didn't, but what I'm saying is even in cases where people have breathing apparatuses and things, they seem to still wind up with some of these horrific cancers, and it seems as though, a frequency doesn't care if you got a mask over your face. You may be able to keep the dust out, but you're not going to be able to stop a frequency from, obviously tapping into the very makeup of the flesh and bone, right?
Yeah. So, well, finally, the Internet of Things, it doesn't matter if you don't have a mobile phone, and if you are being watched by your TV, which is now a fact. The CIA have done it, because they'll be able to track your body purely on its own. They're spraying carbon nanofibers, which can build up along your nervous system, and along with all the heavy metals that go through the water system they can't strain out that we drink, your whole body will be a transmitter for them to track.
Morgellons disease.
Yep.
Along those lines. I've looked into that quite a bit, and there's a lot to that. There's so many things going on. You have to be a rocket scientist to try and keep up with half the crazy what they're playing with.
So where's it all going to end? Sometimes you feel helpless because you think, well, we've got the vaccines, we've got mercury, they're spraying us, they're adding it to the water, they're adding it to the food, they're changing us with microwaves. I do believe there are evil entities at work here, and I'm talking of a different realm. You're calling Satan, demons, what you want. But this is for real. Isn't it unusual that all the world's top rulers are involved with paedophilia, satanic worship, you name it, that's the sort of subject that they all end up in. Even Hollywood's involved with it to sell the soul. And then you've got Satan worship even at the football, with the famous pop stars doing the rituals. So there is some form of evil entity that's bringing all this upon humankind, and it's all down to the free will. Is men to have a future of free will, or are they going to be controlled? And I really believe there's going to be a third-party intervention somewhere down the line.
Well, no, that's a loaded subject for the next hour.
Yeah.
No, it definitely is. And, of course, we could get into the discussion of organized religion and how that's just, a farce. It's been masked in order to misdirect people as well. And the New Age movement has done a pretty good job doing the very same thing, misdirecting and warping the individual's mindset, convoluting various types of philosophies together, and creating something that is other. And there's certainly, and I'm not somebody who is, I've said this a million times on this show, I'm somebody who's not a Christian, but I absolutely believe that there is an adversarial process here on this planet, and we're definitely dealing in that system, the adversarial system, which is why nothing is labeled as it should be, which is why the language is, we are absolutely confounded by our language, as they were when Nimrod fired his bow. We need to remember this. Anyway, we are coming up against the break. Barry Prince is with me. Harry Rhodes is with me. And also, Patty Walkenturtle has joined us. I do know that this conversation is going to get quite a bit deeper. I don't know how long Harry's going to stick around, but either way, that's what we're going to do. Barry, do you think we've covered some interesting ground in the first hour here?
I think this has been a very, very educational and entertaining first hour, Chuck. And I'm looking forward to the next one. We'll give Patty a chance to talk.
Absolutely, we will. We didn't get her in right away, but as I did promise, she is here. So, Patty, I hope you're buckled up and ready to go for the next hour. Are you ready?
You betcha.
You betcha.
Born ready.
And Harry, I may have some stranger questions for you in the next hour because, you know what? I see the organization of the strangeness coming together, which seems to be the opponent of life. I see that there is a choice for a lot of us, and it is life or the taking of it. That seems to be what we have choices about, in our day-to-day lives. And our participation is necessary. In fact, I think it's our willing participation and permission as a collective species that is prerequisite to all of this destruction and disease and terrible things, the warping of our very DNA through energetic purposes and for the agenda, which, quite honestly, if you're a decent individual, you do have a hard time wrapping your mind completely around the motives for it. But who knows, maybe we'll get into some of that discussion in the next hour. And this is absolutely not what I expected to do tonight here on the show. But you know what? You never know quite what you're going to get on a Monday night, that's for sure. And as I said, Barry Prince, as my co-host, always keeps the curveballs coming, which I try and do to my co-hosts as well. I appreciate it. So what do you think, Barry? Are we all set to get into some other deeper subjects here?
I think this is going to get pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to Patty's thoughts on this subject, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Harry a little bit more. I think we're all going to have something to say about this particular subject.
Right, and before I go into that next hour, absolutely. Before I go into that next hour, I want to thank Mr. Lipinski over for going over to Ochelli.com, which, by the way, the website is under construction, so things are changing over there at the moment, and don't be disturbed by it. It's getting more evolved. So go ahead and check out Ochelli, OCHELLI.com, which is my home website. And guys, this conversation, this podcast, whatever it is, maybe you're hearing it a day or two later, or maybe you're listening to us live. We do appreciate you. Stick around for the next hour of the Ochelli Effect. We'll be right back here on American Freedom Radio. Second hour of the Ochelli Effect begins here on American Freedom Radio at AmericanFreedomRadio.com, which indeed is where the live show originates. Guests tonight, well, first of all, my co-host, Barry Prince, who is the host of The Big Puzzle and is out there doing his thing. Hopefully he'll be on a couple other networks soon. One of the networks that he's on with The Big Puzzle at the moment is involves Patty Walkenturtle, who's with us tonight. And the most interesting guest that we've had, well, this week, we just started the week, so not hard to do. The most interesting guest, I'm making jokes here, Mr. Rhodes, Harry Rhodes, ha ha ha, I'll be here all week, tip your waitress. Thing is, Harry Rhodes is with us, and we are talking about alternative energy, weather manipulation. We brought up, Reich already. We brought up Tesla already. We brought up a great many interesting things about water. And, I'm just going to kind of turn this one over to Barry now. And I do want to get to hear from Patty Walkenturtle before too long. But for now, Barry, where should we go next?
Anywhere you really want to go. We kind of got into a little bit of a conversation, and maybe Harry wants to share a few more thoughts about what he sees going on the dark side. Because I know that Patty would like to share a thought on that real quick, and so would I. I mean, what we see going on right now, what really I bring to people's attention is just to get them to go and have a look at the opening ceremony for the tunnel in Switzerland. And if you watch that ceremony, there is no hiding the fact that the Luciferian agenda is being perpetrated at light speed across the planet. We are seeing a very, very bad and evil push from an entity that, if you want to call him the devil, if you want to call him Lucifer, if you want to call him the dark side, they are really ramping up their agenda. We see it all through society, more so in the last 10 years, where we've really seen an acceleration of this agenda being brought through Hollywood and through our entertainment industries, through all aspects of society. So to me, it is not a good thing. That I see our family unit under attack. I see children under attack. I see the morality of our society under attack. And to me, that's deeply disturbing. My thoughts on that for a minute. I'll turn it over to Harry or Patty.
Just quick, I don't want to steal Patty's thunder. Just all life is under attack right now. Whether it's whales, dolphins, we're having hundreds of dolphins wash up on the Cornish coast in the UK. And officially they say they don't know why. But all life is under attack. When I drove through parts of Northern California, forests, miles and miles of trees, white, ghostly dead. Mm-hmm. Amazing. But there's a spiritual war going on, whether people are religious or not or whatever. There is an energy life force war going on against all life on this planet. And it's amazing. It's premeditated, it's planned, it's intelligently done. We mentioned Morgellons disease. So we almost feel helpless to fight back, but I've been blown away by technology that's been put in my hands, with it related to ether, that is a massive fight back to what they've been deploying as far as the chemtrails and other things. But the energy that we're working with at the moment is to do with the positiveness for life itself. It's had some fantastic effects, not just for resetting the weather and blue skies, but even things like purifying water. And the other thing with ether is that mentioned Joe Sal earlier. If nobody knows anything about Joe Sal, look him up on YouTube. Incredible energy that can be transferred through a solid rod to a car engine, and the engine will run on no fuel.
A couple of questions have come up actually in my Skype here, which sometimes people Skype me questions during the show. Didn't ask for them, but here they are, because people are wondering about actually defending themselves personally against these frequencies that they can't seem to escape. So I thought it would be a perfect time to bring them up. There's this concept of clothing which contains like a Faraday cage, sort of. Wondering what you think about that. And also, does orgonite this idea about, taking the crystals and using the metal shavings and this kind of stuff. Does this help with self-defense when it comes to these sorts of frequencies coming and twisting the natural presentation we were talking about in the DNA, this kind of stuff, the alteration of the DNA? Do you think these types of measures are helpful to the individual?
They are. They're only limited. That, for example, with a mobile phone transmitted signal from towers and also from the phone itself, it does straighten out the frequency and help it to be less harmful to us. But to have a total 100% protection, you've got to be in a Faraday cage or wear a jacket full of this orgone material, which is not practical. There are paints you can put on the whole of the house that will reduce it almost to zero. So there are things that you can do on that. But it's a very difficult thing to protect yourself permanently because you have to leave the house. And these frequencies are everywhere. Even the electricity around the house gives a field off, which is damaging to you.
Well, that's interesting too, because the actual electrical grid, sort of the wires running through one's house, create a field in and of themselves, don't they? And recently I heard somebody mention that if you take, the whole concern with the smart meters and stuff like that, and also dealing with those wires having this EMF coming off of it in your home, strategic placement of things like mirrors in the house could also help, like let's just say in the bedroom, right? In an odd sort of way. I've heard this before. What do you think of that?
That would be news to me, but we do use mirrors, two-way mirrors in the equipment, to create an etheric potential. So I don't know. You'd have to get a meter to test that.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I would say test these things at all times, but I always like to encourage people to protect themselves as best as possible where they can from any of this stuff. Avoid, obviously, the biochemical nonsense as best you can. And, don't cook yourselves with too much Wi-Fi and things where you can avoid it. But at the same time, I think any of these self-defense measures, it's hard to gauge which ones are enough of an effect to be worthy of trial. But no, I just wanted to interject these things in there because what you're starting to talk about here, though, is a more massive sort of way of dealing with it, right?
Yes, it can be expensive as well because you can get liners that go in the roof and on the walls, etc. Yeah, it's very, very difficult to protect yourself. One way is to get all the elements which they are trying to put in our bodies out of your body by detoxing. That's very, very important.
I agree 100%, Harry, because really these people are psychopaths. And to say that they're not putting chemicals and metal particulates in our body to interact with frequencies that they can control, that's something I've really been looking into, and how these nanoparticles interact with frequencies and what they can do to control actual human behavior by adjusting the frequencies based on the chemicals or the particulates that are in your body. So flushing your body is absolutely critical. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And there's some fantastic materials on the market now you can get. Zeolite is one of them. I take that. That's incredible. And it's always coming back to organic food. Organic food is the right frequency that the body needs. Genetically modified upsets everything. For most part, it can't be recognized as for what it is by the stomach. So it causes problems. Sorry, Patty, I feel I'm stealing your time.
Oh no, Harry. I think that I've been built up quite too much here. But I did have. What about the Tommy Copper clothing line? I mean, they have everything from socks all the way to headgear, body, shirts, underclothes, all of this, and that's woven with copper. Wouldn't that provide sort of a Faraday cage?
Yeah, I'm sure it would, because it runs on the surface of the metals, and it stops. But they've got frequencies now that can go through 3-inch thick steel as though it's not there. It's quantum frequencies. Now, quantum reacts instantly with the place that it's making contact with, regardless of what is in between. And what we deploy etherically, this is absolutely true. I couldn't believe it at first. We use coordinates to go through the planet, and that's how we did it. Now, Barry's seen a video on how we did it. The storm Nepal attack that hit Taiwan was hit by 3 individuals on different parts of the planet, and we got coordinates to go through the planet and split it straight down the middle. So the etheric reaction is a quantum reaction, and that's why the builder of the HAARP station said that they have no defense against that type of technology.
So you're certainly not a flat Earth guy then, are you?
No, it just wouldn't work.
It would not work. I have tried to explain this, that there are certain ways that you can actually tell without having to go out into space that the Earth is not indeed a plate or flat. But anyway, from what you just described, though, you're one of these guys who knows that factually. So it's great to hear. Thank you. Anyway, sorry to throw that in. And of course, you do have a YouTube channel that you're willing to promote right now. A lot of other things you might be doing might not be available to the public just yet. But on YouTube you have some videos up, right?
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel called Cantrail. I've made videos that one of them got passed around the Houses of Parliament to MPs because I proved that certain storms in the UK were man-made. And I provided the information and the evidence and the documentation that proved it was man-made. And so questions were asked, but it didn't go anywhere. One of my accolades is serving notice of intention to prosecute David Cameron. And it was only a few weeks after that he resigned, but I don't think it was because of my letter.
No, I'm sure it wasn't, but good on you for doing that one. Somebody's got to try and serve some papers to these globalists. Anyways,
well, here's one of my next projects. Right, Oxford University admitted that contrails, or call them chemtrails if you want. Let's play it their way. Contrails create cloud formations and block out sunlight. Now, I've got 4 kilowatts of solar panels on my roof. They've officially admitted now that their aircrafts, their emissions, are blocking sunlight, which is now costing me money. And imagine a £50 million solar farms, and there's a lot of them in the UK. It's costing them hundreds of thousands of pounds every year just so jets can fly over the top and emitting their cloud-forming deposits in the atmosphere. There has got to be some form of litigation and liability in court which is admissible. Has to be.
Well, if you go to Climate Viewer, I think it's climateviewer3d.com. If you go there, you can actually look up one of the first lawsuits that was had in the United States over the residual cloud effect that was kind of starting to happen in the tri-state area in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, in that area in the U.S., because the increased traffic was starting to add to the problem of things overhead. And this is about a 30 or 40-year-old lawsuit. I think it might be 40-year-old lawsuit by now. I think it was in the late 70s, like 1979 or 1980, where this actually happened. But I mean, look it up, because there may be some precedent here. Not necessarily an English precedent, but, as international law goes, you might actually be able to introduce it as, I know barristers do that on occasion. In the UK, they will introduce things that have been handled in American courts, which don't necessarily, mean that a court has to hear it, but it is an interesting thing to study, I think. If you
so, did they win the case?
It was settled. It was settled, and where it went from there is a whole other story. But it was acknowledged by the courts, and it was handled. So that's why I'm saying you might want to look into it and see exactly where it went, what it meant, and what they had to say about it, because it might be a good template for what you're talking about over there. Although what you're talking about is more direct impact than the states of, say, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, actually taking the FAA to court over it. It might be a little more of a direct, damages kind of case than what they had. So actually you might have a better chance than they did.
I think to be cut and dry, because you can film the emissions blocking the sunlight out, and then you can show the dial plummeting of the electric production. So what more evidence do you need than that?
Right. Right. Well, you know how it is. You got to be able to recreate things and properly document them in order to present them in those things we call courts anymore. And if it's not done precisely the right way, or if you don't know the right people, you know how it goes. So there's lots of possibilities there, but I urge you to take a look at that because it did happen some years ago. And Jim Lee is the guy who runs that site. We mentioned it a couple of times here.
Yeah.
I kind of wish, you know Jim, right?
Yeah, he's a good one.
Absolutely has been a guest on this show a couple times, and I love the guy. Every time he's on here, I learn something entirely new.
Yeah.
So, there you go. But anyway, I know you said you wanted to kind of bow out at about this point, so if that's what you want to do, we can continue on with the conversation.
I do have to shoot now, but it's been great. I hope I've contributed something worthwhile.
It's definitely been thought-provoking. What do you think, Barry?
I want to thank Harry for taking time to join us tonight and sharing his thoughts. It got me thinking about some stuff, and, there's a million different things out there that we got to learn about, and tonight I learned a few things.
Well, we're looking for people to join the team, so if anybody wants to get on board, you can forward their details to me. They contact you. Or they can look on my Facebook, Harry Rhodes. I've got a public Facebook there. They can contact me in person.
Absolutely. And if you don't like Facebook, you can go to Ochelli.com and use the contact form, which is there now. And I will definitely pass it along to Mr. Rhodes. Okay?
Okay. Great speaking with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
Thank you, Harry.
Bye.
Take care. So we also have Patty with us, who hasn't had a lot to say, but was listening to a good deal of the conversation. And I kind of turn it back over to Barry and Patty now to discuss, either what we've already been going over, or we could take it into another direction.
Patty, what is on your mind, my dear?
Well, I'm
putting it on you.
Yeah, thank you.
You take the lead.
I really think that what Harry Rhodes had to say was very, very interesting. In fact, I am going to see if I can get in touch with him. I missed the first half of that conversation. I wish I would have caught it all so I could have had a little bit better understanding of exactly what he's talking about. I have questions that I'm sure that he can answer, but we're dealing with a system that was put in place to create a world of distress, of divisiveness, of ignorance. Our science is bunk. Our history is a lie. Our governments are corrupt. Our health system is a death system. There is no healing in the medical profession. The way the system is geared up, it's geared for profit. Governments are geared for profit. And as I explained the other day, you can't have an efficient government. It's not possible. They don't make them that way. They aren't made to be efficient. What they are made to do is to squander money, to black book money, and to create a citizenship of people willing to put their ideas, their innovations, their backbone and hard labor into creating these systems, these factories, and then to build these machines, these products, and then to purchase these products, all for profit. The only ones who aren't profiting and have never profited off of this system are the people. So we have to look at this system and say, hey, you know what? This system isn't broken. It's working just like it was supposed to. It's our perspective that is skewed on this. Obviously, they're not in it for our benefit. If they were, then we would have received benefit by now. After all of these centuries, these decades, all the wars, all the suffering, the famines, the food shortages that are a lie, all of it's a lie. So we sit here globally and we argue about the POTUS and how they're the bad guy. They're just a puppet. But we really know who the culprit is. We really know where the problem is. And we know what the cure is. We have the cure. The only thing we don't have is a consensus of movement toward that cure. And if we have more people who are willing to step out and to speak the truth and to call it what it is, it doesn't matter who's in your government, they're corrupt. It doesn't matter who your government is, they're corrupt. It doesn't matter what country you're in, they're part of the corporate structure that is going to rule your life and has ruled your life. Your children are going to suffer just like the children have suffered. The elderly are going to get sicker and die. Those people who, not me because I am an elder, but those people who are of an age to be productive will cease to be productive more and more and more. We're moving away from the agenda that was set 100 years ago. Now we're on to the new agenda, and the new agenda is to use human resources the same as they do the seeds or the trees or the plants or the fish or the animals, to cull and to mitigate as they see fit. That's why we have children who are experiencing the most atrocious rates of autism today. It's why we have kids in college who cannot, for the life of them, stand up and give a reason why they're against a political opponent. They can't even define the words they use when talking about political opponents.
You know what it is, Patty, is that, and here's where I come down on this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that people have become too convinced that they have an identity, which that identity has been provided for them. You're part of a group, you're part of this group, you're part of that group. You need to understand that, here's your tribal assignment. Okay, one way or another, whether that be by race, by gender, by religion, by political persuasion, by your ideas, ideals, your way of life, whatever it may be, you're being given this label, this identity, which directs you, right, to have opponents all the time. It keeps us very much divided and conquered because we keep at each other's throats. We keep worried about those people over there, the other people that are coming, the people that might be around, the people that are hiding, the others. We're worried about fighting with each other so often because we're defending our alleged identities, our alleged labels, okay, that have been designed for us, okay? Literally taking on the dog tags for these people, all right? And then pitting ourselves one against the other for the amusement, really, of those who are actually controlling and benefiting no matter who lives, who dies, who succeeds, who fails, who's sick, who's healthy. It doesn't matter to them because no matter what happens, they're profiting off of the entire game. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, I do agree, but there's something at the head of that, and Harry did touch on that, which maybe is a good place to begin with too. That those who I call the controllers, I've never heard their names, I've never seen their faces, nor will I ever see their faces or hear their names. They're the ones that are silent, that we don't see. The ones we do see are the ones they put out for us to attack, for us to focus our anger on and our angst on, to rise up against and in futility. But the controllers are very ancient, I do believe. And I do believe this is not their first rodeo. I do believe that they are well instructed in technologies that we haven't even considered at this time. I do believe that they know things that are happening and that will happen in our future that we have no clue about. And I think that, someone asked me the other day, they said, well, Patty, if this is so, why, and they're poisoning us, and they're poisoning our skies, they're poisoning our water, they're poisoning our food, our health system is killing us. It's killing them too, isn't it? And they're destroying the earth. Isn't that going to be bad for them? And I just want to point out the fact that they have seed vaults. They have DNA vaults of every living thing, including human DNA, stowed away. They have deep underground bunkers. Of course, they know something, and of course, they're not worried about what's going to happen to this earth. Perhaps this isn't their first time around, and they're just going to reseed and rebuild again. This is just a theory of mine, because I'm looking at the way they are acting, what they are doing right now. And to me, it points to the fact that, yeah, they don't care what they're doing to the earth. It doesn't matter to them. But yet they've taken the seeds of the earth, they've taken the animals and the plants and the biology and the human DNA of the earth, and they have stored it away. And now they've got us yelling at each other. They've got us rising up, calling each other names, racism, hatred for religion, you name it, it's out there. They've got us going crazy. We're no longer focused on the cure. We're focused on the friction that is now a part of everybody's lives, the chaos across the globe. Every country is doing the same thing. So, to me, this is a pattern, and they're leading us somewhere. And that's,
Another fascinating aspect here, Patty, I think, is the idea of transhumanism and the singularity. Because it seems to me as though you could argue, because I don't know any of the controllers myself. I don't know them personally. I couldn't even put names to the people that I think are really running the show, or the entities even that are really running the show at the moment. I've got to tell you, though, that it seems to me as though part of the agenda might be to create this something other, which they feel they will have a part in one way or another. Now, you could say that the integration of the technological and the biological is part of the agenda, and maybe they figure, hey, look, it'll kill off all those people that haven't been, enhanced one way or another, and they're getting the enhancements. I mean, we've heard about the CRISPR technology. We've heard about the genetic editing and things like this that's going on. But these are the toys. These are the experimentations to make sure that the real stuff, the real deal that's being held behind, the veil, if you will. I think that these are just the toys that go along with the real big guns. And that's what it is. It's like we're getting the cap guns, and they've got the they've got the M16s here. This is what's happening. What do you think about that part of it, though, that maybe they just think they're going to be exempt because of their integration with technology, their ability to maybe even download themselves into something that is not organic, which wouldn't require any of the facilities or elements that we require as human beings or as animals or as plants or anything else to survive. You could literally kill all life, and if you are the artificial life form, you could then reseed all life again, couldn't you, if you believe that you can transfer your consciousness into machines and things like this. I know it sounds almost like science fiction to some people, but very real in my estimation. Very real possibilities. Good.
It is plausible, and I go back to the fact that, yes, they have made preparation. Do you know that MIT just came out with a paper stating that they have created a time crystal? They have quantified a crystal and have reached a force 4D is what they call it. And they are saying that they can, with this crystal in the future, possibly use it for time travel and for other things also. This, to me, lets me know that they already have this technology, because if they've released it and allowed it, that means that this is secondary to the actual technology that they do have. And so if they have the ability to implement time travel, then they can simply take a vacation, come back. But I look at the fact that they have collected all these vaults, and that they have built these deep underground bunkers. And here in the United States, they don't say anything about those. They allow a little bit of information out so that we can start talking about it and get our minds off of, like you said, what's coming. We're all looking forward, but we don't see what's coming behind us. And I do believe that what's coming behind us is something that is cyclical, that they know. And I know a lot of people think there's a planet Nibiru. Perhaps there is. I don't know. I have no proof of it. I have no proof either way. I do know, however, that there are changes happening within our solar system that are beyond the scope of Earth. And I do know that the chemtrailing, the materials that they are using in chemtrails, can be used to mitigate radiation, which we are receiving from the sun. I do know that our heliosphere, our atmosphere, all of this is degenerating to a point. And so there's a reason for this. But, you know, the one thing that I say is the real tell, this system and these controllers will always tell you everything except for the truth that they really want you to know. So the things they aren't talking about to me are always suspect. And when they will not talk about things that are happening that we see happening in our world, when they boo-hoo it, when they say, oh, no, it's just a freak of nature, it's a phenomenon, oh, it happens all the time. Remember when chemtrails first started coming out? That's what they said. Oh, they've been around forever. No, they haven't. I grew up and I saw clouds, you know. This is the way they do things. And I think that we still are looking in the wrong direction. And I do think that we have the ability to stop what they are doing. But I don't think that we have the ability to stop this cycle that we are coming into. I don't know what it is. I wish I did. But everything to me, from what I've seen, points to the fact that something that we are not looking at, they're working so hard to keep us in our focus on things that really don't matter, a political system which we know is a sham and that is just a bread and circus game. Yet the whole world is involved in these political processes right now, which is insane, you know. We're not coming together. 2 years ago, we were coming together. 2 years ago, we were all about solutions and getting to the right place to join together. And then they brought in this election here in the U.S., and everything's gone. Everybody's fighting everybody, calling names, throwing things, you know. It just makes me think that we were getting too close, that maybe they had to gear it up. Perhaps it's just their agenda. I don't know. But, yeah, I do think that they have the ability to morph into, I won't say cyborg, but transhumanism. They have this technology. We know this. And it would be the ultimate for them, wouldn't it? I mean, Terminator society to control us and then living an eternal life in their plush surroundings while we just melted into the earth down here, you know?
Mm. All of this at the same time, not really considering the fact that the sun at any moment could give us a good enough burst to knock out all this stuff so that nothing was functional. You know, a literal EMP could be given to us from a solar flare that pierces through this very small magnetic sphere that is around us, very shallow, very fragile kind of thing, actually, that keeps a great deal of the most harmful bits that come from the sun away from organic life like us and allows us to flourish. But anyway.
Carrington event, if the Carrington event happened today, Chuck, it would knock out all electrical grids in the United States, around the world, for 10 years. The Carrington event happened in, 1864, I believe it was. But I was studying that, and that can happen anytime. You're right, the sun can knock us out anytime it wants.
Well, there's a million things that could do it. An asteroid, a comet, the sun belching really badly. We have a wave on Venus. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet. A plasma wave that goes from pole to pole. That they think, Venus doesn't have an atmosphere, so there's nothing to buffet from the sun's radiation. And from what we understand, there's no sunspots, yet there's plenty of photons and there's plenty of plasma that is coming out of the sun, so we're not really sure why, but it's causing this giant wave on Venus,
There's a lot of things going on out there right now, Patty, that we can't even begin to understand. There's definitely changes going on in our galaxy. And, I've looked at Nibiru and I've looked at the dwarf stars and the parallel planets and all this different theories out there. Nobody can put their foot on it or their finger on it right to the point, but there is definitely something going on out there. And I guess we're just along for the ride, because what's going to happen is going to happen. We're just a little speck of dirt in a big, big beach.
Well, it's like what the chat room is talking about, really, when it comes down to it. The only thing that we have that we can truly rely on is our connection to the energy of creation. And whether you consider that energy of creation to be God or to be pure energy, frequency, either way, it's real. You can't deny that it is not real. We have too many people experiencing the miracles associated with the spiritual side of ourselves. So if we can get ourselves right spiritually, and if we believe that when we leave here we continue on, then there should be no fear of what's coming. I've said that before, that I have no fear of dying. I'm not afraid to die. I just want to make sure that my walk is worth something before that happens. I don't want to waste this experience. And it's not, I'm not, Barry, that I'm not biblically oriented. My culture speaks to a different. We call the Creator the Great Mystery because we have no clue who the Creator is. We know that the Creator exists. We know that the Creator is pure energy because we feel that connection within ourselves, and we feel the manipulation of energies from all sources, from the dark energies, the negative energies, as well as the positive. We know that we can manipulate these energies within ourselves simply by vibration, simply by frequency. And as Harry was talking about, through diet, we are organic beings. And if we live organically, then we will produce good energy. If, however, we fill our lives with inorganics, then we detach ourselves from who we truly are, and we become ill, we become sick, our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. So these are all connected, You gotta watch me, I ramble on, Chuck.
No, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm wondering what Barry has to say about it, though.
Well, really, we are what we eat, and in our world today, we are absolutely being bombarded with chemicals and genetically modified food. Everything that seems to be happening to the human being right now is counterproductive to what we're really supposed to experience on this world, and that's a full and abundant life. Well, now we see a society that is just absolutely spiraling downwards in as far as our health goes, as far as our mental stability, as far as our moral standings. And what Patty's saying in my life is absolutely true, that I have a connection with a spirit that is way more powerful than I can even begin to understand. But I feel the connection is absolutely 100% real, and I don't sit here and say, hey, this is the way you've got to go, you've got to think my way or the highway. It's not about that at all. It's about a spiritual connectedness in your life where we see now the devil or Lucifer or the bad side or the dark side or whatever you want to call it is absolutely running crazy on our planet. We see our society spiraling downwards, almost at the pits of morality, where things that we wouldn't even talk about 20 years ago now are being accepted by society. Things like bestiality, pedophilia is being now promoted worldwide as not a crime, but a simple a human choice or a human sexual choice, and it's being glorified. And what Harry said earlier, everybody that's involved in our governments seems to be dwelling in the dark side. They're into this pedophilia up to their noses, and child sex trades and trafficking and the rituals they go on. It boggles my mind that these people are the people that are running our world. But we see it all through our entertainment. We see it everywhere now. This proliferation of what I call the dark side, the devil. And to me, we are on in our lives, it's kind of like you got to make a choice. Either you do what you feel is right in your life, and if that's following one creator or following one spiritual belief, you've got to stay on that path. You've got to be committed to it. And if it's real in your life, follow it. But right now, I see the world at a kind of a pinnacle where like Patty was saying, there is an amazing rising of spirituality in the world. I see that all over the place. But on the same side, we see an incredible rising of the devil. So we're having right now on this planet is an incredible spiritual battle, and the battle's for the human soul. So I'm just kind of in a good place right now. Chuck, I don't worry about what's coming because I know what's going to be is going to be. I honestly believe that. I believe everything that's happening right now is for a reason, that it's all being played out as it's supposed to be played out, and what's going to come is going to come. I honestly believe that. So I just make sure that my heart's in the right place every day. Period.
No, look, and I agree with that. You should always be prepared from within first. This is the thing. There's no reason to fear death as much as you fear your next breath. It's going to come eventually, and there's not much you're going to be able to do about it. All things are meant to be as they are. Unfortunately, I think that it's been strange recently with some of these discussions where people think that, things like pedophilia are newly emerging, and some of these other things are newly emerging. They're not. They're really not.
Oh,
this has been here a long, long time. Unfortunately, it's a cancerous thing that is all over the human species and has been for a very long time. I'm not going to say I fully understand it. I'm just going to tell you that this is nothing new. And the strange thing is that a lot of people focus on, okay, we do have people in power that are getting caught a bit more than they used to. That's for sure. But I think that this was always the case. And I think that it's just historically correct that this is just something that is an illness on mankind for some reason. Now, as for who put it there and why it was done, this is where I refer back again to that concept of the adversary, which, you would describe as a Satan or a devil or whatever. But the point is, I think that agenda, I wish it was the Christian concept of Satan, to be honest with you, because there would be a logic there that I could wrap my mind around. As twisted as it is, there is a logic there. To me, this is not even something that can be codified into a logic. It's something that is so against who I am and what I can reckon. And believe me, I can reckon the darkness of man just as easily as anyone else, and probably a little deeper and a little more personally than some others can. But I cannot fathom what motivates some people to do some of the things they do, without looking towards something way outside of the realm of what we can easily observe. So there is certainly something else, something other at play here. And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody has fully fleshed out what it is that motivates all of this. recently you heard me talk about this, Barry, where I said, if we could simply remove the component from mankind, all of us, that seems to promote the need to dominate one another for one reason or another, this need to competitively reduce someone else to being lesser than in one way or another. If this was actually removed from the equation, all of these things would seem to go away. Even those who say, well, look, psychopaths are born no matter what the condition is. I tell you this, we've never had a situation where there wasn't the need for tribal, national, smaller groups, whatever, seeking to dominate, seeking to overcome, seeking to overwrite the will of others. If this was ever removed from the equation, we would have a wholly different world, which we've never seen, at least based on all of my studies of history. And I wish that we could find a formula for that. Some people say they wish for world peace. I do not, because, if we were all dead, if everything on this planet was dead, if this thing was nothing more than a barren rock, we would have peace. I don't want peace. I want life. And I want life with that removal of the need to dominate, to be aggressive, and to destroy. So world peace is something I never wish for because it could be presented to us in a lot of different ways. Anyway, Patty, a lot of thought-provoking stuff that you had to say. We're kind of running a little low on time. We got maybe 10 minutes left. And, I kind of want to give it back to Barry and say, listen, man, what else is on your mind with the last 10 minutes of the Monday version of this show?
Well, hey, real quick on the positive side, I got involved with a group in Terrace here last week, and we are going to do a feasibility study and a cost projection for the government to start a thermoelectric power plant. Just out of Terrace here, I put the link in chat there earlier. It's the Mount Layton hot springs, and the power out there, it's unbelievable what we could do real close to Terrace here. We could also set up massive greenhouses using the mineralized water to produce unbelievable vegetables. We could, from what we're thinking and what we're looking at right now, provide all the vegetables for Terrace, Kitimat, and as far down the road as Prince George, all organic. So that's something I got involved in last week, Chuck, on the positive side. Besides that, we don't have time to talk about everything that's driving me nuts. There's a million things that are, but tonight was a enlightening conversation. I enjoyed listening to Harry, and I always love having Patty in. The way she articulates things and her thought process is just incredible, and I want to thank her for joining, and thank you for having me in again. It's been an enjoyable evening.
Absolutely. And before we do get out of here, Patty, tell people about the radio network that The Big Puzzle is on that I referenced earlier, please.
Okay, it's These Changing Times Radio, and we have a Facebook page, and we also have a YouTube channel where you can see or listen to and upload the podcast for Barry's show, as well as we have Turtle Talk, a show with me and Barbara Three Crow. We also have a music show that we just started on Saturday nights where we play music and we talk about some of the news. We have a really good time. This next Saturday is going to be a goof-off night, so we're going to handle the weird, wacky news. There's a lot of shows that we've got going on, and Gerald Whitehorse Standing on Sundays. We're a little network, but we're all about solutions. We're all about bringing people together. We're all about open dialogue. We don't censor, and we ask for people to bring their differing opinions. We never have a problem in chat because we treat each other respectfully. We just want to open up the lines of communication. We all have ideologies. We all have ideas, but we do have solutions, and they all pertain to one thing, and that is a benefit for us and every other living thing on this planet, and that's what we're working for. That's what we're working towards. So, TCT Radio for short, These Changing Times with a Z, Times with a Z Radio on Facebook and on YouTube, and you can find our radio station at these_changing_times with a Z_radio.info. Long title.
There you go. And do advise that you go check it out. Of course, it sounds like there's quite a few what we now call Native American names in there in the mix over at These Changing Times. And I've always found what when I was a kid we called them Indians, but now mostly referred to as Native American or indigenous people, whatever, to the North American continent. The fact is, I've always found their relative relationship with nature to be most fascinating and refreshing. And it sounds to me like I'm just, I'm making a broad generalization here that you have some people that'll present ideas like that over there as well, huh?
Oh yes. In fact, I always tell people that on Sundays when Gerald shows on, please bring a pencil and paper, because Gerald, he goes through tribal issues, tribal prophecy, and he matches it with biblical prophecy and other prophecies. He matches it also with astrology, astronomy. He shows the links between all of this. It's a very, very interesting program. We talk a lot about the tribal nature, clan mother law, the natural law, the law of one. We want to bring people together. This is the time for the people to gather. This is our time to empower each other and to shine. And that's what we're about.
Absolutely. So, Barry, we're going to put a bow on this one because just a couple of minutes left. So, what do you think? Your final thoughts for the entire discussion? I know you gave some, but and we didn't quite get to everything you wanted to. But look, you know what? There's always another Monday, so long as I stay in one piece, which is difficult. But I'm trying, man, on this show, so we can always get to it next week if there's some other stuff you wanted to cover. But again, thanks to Patty and thanks for Harry, for, Mr. Rhodes and Harry, Patty Walking Turtle, not Walking Turtle, for joining us. But, Barry, I'll give you the final word for the night, man.
Just a quick shout out to one of the situations I've been monitoring a lot, and that is the situation in California and the potential for disaster there. In the next 3-4 weeks is really going to be a trying time. So my thoughts and prayers are with them, Chuck, and I hope that this potential disaster doesn't happen and that everything turns out good for California. They are in my thoughts all the time right now, and I'm monitoring it closely through a friend of mine. Besides that, guys, it's been an enjoyable conversation, great thoughts, lots of love here, and that's what we need today in this world.
Well, it would certainly help if that's what we did. I mean, I'm always encouraging people, random acts of kindness, random acts of caring. It doesn't necessarily have to cost you a dime, just a touch of energy, pushing in the right direction. You never know what cascading effect you may cause. You know what I mean? Just a bit of help or a bit of, again, I use the word kindness, being granted to somebody who needs it, being granted to somebody who maybe isn't in the right direction, could absolutely change the world around you and therefore resonate as a change way beyond your visual scope. And that's something that I think we need to keep in mind at all times. Everything you do does count, whether you think so or not. And, that is what needs to be kept in mind as we go forward. And we may never really get our minds fully around the motivations of those who seem to wish to destroy and poison us. But I think if we make for a positive mass altogether, a whole lot more coherent and a whole lot more cohesive than we have done, then we will be a much more difficult beast to deal with. They work together, so should we. Keep that in mind. Anyway, the Ochelli effect is done. You guys need to stay tuned, and who knows what's up next, but I'll tell you. Tomorrow night I'll have J.P. Satilli and, of course, Michael Swanson. I know we'll get political and we'll get on to the current events of the day, but every time we have one of these conversations, hopefully it's a current event in your mind. Thanks again, Harry, Patty, Barry, and to you guys listening. Have a good night, everybody.